Hello, good morning. In 2003, at the College of Medicine in TEDxYaba, I was a freshman in the medical school, and I was visited or met by a very exciting experience. I saw a very, very divergent environment where I was schooling in one of the most sophisticated medical schools in Nigeria, and right beside us was a slum where we had recorded then a very recent violent community clash, and we recorded a lot of deaths. So this event in my first year in medical school created a lifetime challenge, which has created the pathway for my career. So between 2003 and when I graduated from medical school, I continued to search our best to actually tackle this issue. Immediately then, I started researching into communities and how communities are structured. Probably that could help me to transfer some of the information we had in the very sophisticated College of Medicine and transmit it in the environment within which I was schooling. And if this could work, probably I would help to reduce the slum situation of TEDxYaba and probably influence the community influencers in that place, and probably even help to shape the political dynamics that affected that environment. Along the way, when I finished from university, I spent the last 10 years immersing myself in this type of experiences. And as I continue to learn, I therefore discovered that the problem or challenge of transferring capacities into communities would face three big boxes of challenges. And I've described them as those that are extrinsic, those that exist in those environments and coexist with those that are intrinsic, which are those that are within the person who is trying to support or improve those environments. I learned that if you want to penetrate a community like TEDxYaba with change or reforms, I discovered that you would experience pushback where people will just naturally tell you to go away because they probably do not appreciate what you brought. I also experienced that there are potentially existential threats to life where you go into such community and you actually get attacked or you get blackmailed for trying to help. And then I discovered that there are such challenges that are coexisting, one of which is lack of trust, that the person who wants to help probably does not trust this environment enough. So when you go in with a solution, you probably feel, okay, these people cannot withhold this magnitude of change. Or in the other reverse situation, people actually feel you have ulterior intentions, probably you are here to steal from us, or you are here to destroy our ancestry. I also observed that in the mixed situation, there could be a perception gap. Perception gap in the sense that you feel this is the way society should go, but society actually feel that, look, this is what our problem is. That is evident in scenarios such as the Boko Haram situation in northeast of Nigeria, where those who feel communities should be educated have this Western education on one hand, but community on the other hand feel that Western education is actually unlawful into their social life. And these are the kind of mixtures. But the one that actually I have interest in today are those ones that are within us. I have classified them into two: poor self-efficacy and cultural incompetences. So I will go deeper into this. What do we mean by cultural self-efficacy? Self-efficacy is just that thing within you that gives you confidence that whatever you've got to introduce to society actually will work, and that actually you possess those things or those attributes that can make such change occur or happen. For a long time, most of us are probably undermined the power of community, and we do not therefore see the linkage between the little capacity we possess and how far that could change society. But let me give you an example. When you look at a big component of one of the main issues that we're experiencing in the world today, which is the COVID-19 outbreak, you would see that the world, in terms of international health regulation, which is the platform that drives everything we do, requires that communities are actually expected to serve as the first level of informant in terms of bringing out disease surveillance. So that tool or technology that we are trying to build for contact tracing, for instance, actually relies on the community within which that disease outbreak is spreading. So when I looked at TEDxYaba back in the day when I was reflecting, I began to realize that the extent to which I have self-efficacy, that I understood what I needed to do to make such reform in society, would go a long way in determining what will actually change in that environment. So I learned that self-efficacy first starts from actually knowing what is the desired change in the environment you're trying to solve, to support. And then you know what your role could be in trying to make such change occur. And then you begin to gather skill sets that can help you to make such things happen. Then the other big challenge, which is the cultural incompetence. Cultural competence has to do with just helping yourself to align with the way a group of people behave. It could be their language, it could just be generally their way of life, or in some very funny instances, the food they eat. I discovered that lack of cultural competence is the reason why you go into a community poorly dressed by their own standard and you'll be pushed away. And then I realized when I was growing up at the College of Medicine that, okay, I needed to probably learn a couple of languages in terms of Hausa, a bit of Hausa language, just so that I'll be able to engage better in an TEDxYaba community. Now, this big box of 6 challenges that I shared earlier are some of the reasons that most of us have found it hard to support an TEDxYaba community. And I've learned that this is the reason that an TEDxYaba community will be coexisting with the College of Medicine of the University of Lagos. And the truth is, my idea of College of Medicine of the University of Lagos and the TEDxYaba community is actually metaphorical. Actually, I'm not referring to it just in isolation. There are so many communities in the world where you find excess coexisting side by side with lack. In fact, when I arrived in Nigeria for this COVID-19 response, one of the first things I got as an information from those who were responding is that we had about 4,000 contacts that we needed to trace in Lagos, and there was not enough hands to track. So the first question I asked them is, in a community of 23 million people, how do we find it hard to raise 4 million people to participate? Indeed, that is actually a similar scenario between the College of Medicine and the TEDxYaba community. The truth is that you will always find a scenario where communities existing side by side in excess and in lack. And this has affected most of the lives that we live. So if you look closer, you go to Cape Town, you go to Johannesburg, you go to Mexico City, Dar es Salaam, Mumbai, TEDxYaba, Lagos, you go to London, if you go to most of the big cities of the world, you will continue to perceive this tension of lack living side by side with excess. So what I discovered along the line in the last 10 years of my career is I began to piece together methods and practices that could help to solve this kind of problem. And that is what brings me to the last part of my presentation. I discovered that there are several things that we can all do. And the first is to commit. Commitment is an exciting thing because look at this, it affects just all of us as individuals and even for those who are joining as organizations. Commitment requires us to first realize that we need to make a personal shift in attitude or behavior towards the environment. It is not a contractual interaction. It is that you are going to think of yourself as the one who is giving into the environment. And even when the environment is not changing the way you desire for it, you will continue going. Commitment requires us as individuals to move our mind to a place of active intervention persons. And if you're an organization, what this requires of us is a shift in policy. Most times organizations, you will see them coexisting in environments that are slums. They coexist in some environments that have high insecurity. They coexist in environments that have poverty. When you choose to commit, you find yourself moving in the mind shifts to a space where you discover that, look, I actually can be the one that could drive this change. And sometimes you discover that you might just be the only one. But because of the way you applied yourself to the problem, you begin to attract more people to support you. And then the second thing I discovered is how to invest oneself in the power dynamics of the environment that we are living in. The power dynamics of our environment, you can look at it from just the political power dynamics, but it doesn't stop there. There's also the expertise power and also things like the referent power, among others. Power is that thing that helps us to actually drive the decision making that occurs wherever we stay in. I've always said that there's a big opportunity in putting the right person in the right place at the right time. What usually happens in most of our communities is that we do not have the right person in the right place at the right time. In all of our respective communities across the country, Nigeria, and in fact the rest of the world, you will discover there's at least that last administrative formation. In Nigeria, it is called a ward. In a ward, there's a councillor, and there are so many other committees upon which the health systems of our country rely, upon which the security formation relies, upon which the education system of our country relies. But when these micro units are not functional, what most of us do not realize is that then the society begins to break down. I learned early that when I invest myself in the power dynamics, even just as small as the landlord association of my street, begin to make certain reforms that began to affect my life and even those of people that are around me. Then the third one is social presence. Social presence is very important, especially in places like Nigeria, where we've all learned to build houses with very, very high fences. If you look at the picture of TEDxYaba I shared, and the map I shared earlier, and in fact the pictures of the communities I shared earlier, you will observe that fence. There's usually this very high fence that divides the communities that have a lot and those that do not have a lot. We all need to learn not to probably break down those fences, but at least create a gate and entrance into that gate so that we can go out and people can come in. Social presence is that which allows you to say, look, in my own community, we don't have opportunity of physical interaction, but we have this WhatsApp group through which we can interact. And you begin to go in there and you begin to interact with people. Your interaction is what will help you to learn about those you live with. Your interaction is what will help you to realize, okay, these are the challenges that they are facing, and these are the ways that I can be of help. And then the fourth one is working in communities to make those communities thrive. This speaks to the concept of productivity. Now, productivity has a very major role to play in ensuring that our communities begin to solve some of the problems that we have. This may start by you just working in those communities to just buy from what they sell, or you have a solution and you sell the solutions to people around where you live in at good price. This doesn't end there. Looking at education, ability to support the environment we live in with better quality education, either by providing support to schools that are local, or by even opening a learning center, probably for vocational skills, or even after school skill building in technology and language, among other things. Working in communities to make them thrive creates a very big opportunity for those communities to be more resilient and protect themselves in the future. And then finally, how do we begin to support communities with culture fixes? Culture fixes requires us to imagine that, look, while you're not trying to claim that you know how best people should be living, you realize that there are certain cultures that are progressive and there are certain cultures that are not progressive. And while you are there, you begin to help societies to form themselves around what is progressive, and you begin to help them to push away what is not progressive. This might require a lot of time, but it is very possible. What I've learned in my own career space is when we piece these 5 things together, they help us to actually create a better resilient world. Now, what we need to learn is that when COVID-19 came, societies began to lose confidence in how they are going to reform. And as it is still ravaging in some parts of the world, and some are getting better sense of it, and some of us are not sure where we are heading, everybody agrees that in the post-COVID world, it will be more complicated for most of us. Economies have crashed, communities have lost loved ones, and a lot of challenges began to face us. But what I've learned is that when we work together as communities, we will begin to solve some of these problems one step at a time. Solving them one step at a time requires all of us to have a lot of confidence in the factor of community in this big reforms strategy. But for us to go in, we probably would have learned that, oh, there'll be pushback, or you've even tried in the past and you actually experience that threat. What I'm here to share today is that we need to build confidence in our own self-efficacy, and we begin to tackle the cultural incompetencies that are within us. To do that, I share these 5 golden rules which we can all apply in our different lives. And through them, I hope that we can actually create a more resilient world and even be better prepared for a future where it may not just be a disease pandemic, but it may just be a potential economic crisis that most of the world is facing. Thank you very much.